Hi, I'm Dakota Russell with the Heart Mountain, Wyoming Foundation, and I am coming to you today from the James O. and Toshi Nagamori Ito Victory Garden here at Heart Mountain Interpretive Center. Our garden here is named for Jim and Toshi Ito, not just because of the huge role they played in getting the foundation off of the ground and helping to support us and grow us into what we are today, but also because of the huge role played, particularly by James, in setting up the camp's agriculture program. It was really a tall order at first. When the incarcerees arrived in the fall of 1942, this land had never been under plow. In fact, it had not even been irrigated yet. It was completely dry, high desert, capable of growing pretty much nothing but sagebrush. And their task that they faced was to turn this into farmland that could provide enough food to feed the entire population of the camp, nearly 11,000 people. And so this is where James came in. He had just recently, when he got here to Hard Mountain, graduated from the Berkeley School of Agriculture with a degree in ag with an emphasis in soil science. And so he often talked about how he was actually the first man to be allowed to leave the barbed wire confines of the camp and go exploring on the land around us through these desert lands, taking soil samples, which he'd later send away to the University of Wyoming, and determining what were going to be the best areas to start the camp's fields. And so James and a crew of other incarcerated farmers here eventually were able to put more than 1,200 acres under plow and were able to make the camp almost entirely self-sufficient by the end of it there. And so the garden here really recognizes his efforts. But it's important for me to note that this is also very much a community effort. It took the entire population of the Heart Mountain Camp in order to make all of this happen. In fact, we relied heavily on a group of incarcerees that weren't even supposed to be here. About 1,000 farmers who were living in the Yakima Valley area of Washington were actually slated to be sent to the Minidoka camp, rerouted at the last minute when that camp filled up, and sent here to Heart Mountain. They eventually became instrumental in the ag program because the Southern California farmers didn't know how to work with a growing season as short as Wyoming's. Up here, we've only got about 90 to 100 days to grow within. And so being able to extend that season by even just a couple of weeks was vital. The Washington farmers brought with them two innovations in particular that wound up being crucial to the success of the ag program at Hard Mountain. The first one being what they called hot caps. These are like little wax paper hats that they would put over the young plants when they were out in the fields there to protect them from frost damage and from hail. The second one being the hotbeds, which were located on the hillside behind me, kind of along this shelf right here. And these were raised beds that actually had been covered with panes of glass so that they functioned kind of as mini greenhouses to where young plants could be started in these before being transplanted out into the larger fields. And these two innovations were really major in extending that growing season by just a little bit and making sure that the farmers were able to produce enough food to feed the camp. But they weren't the only community members who got involved. In fact, pretty much everybody within the camp chipped in to make sure that the ag program was a success. When men started to receive permission to resettle in the Midwest and started leaving, the tractor driving was largely taken over by the women of the camp. Likewise, at harvest time, it was not unusual to see the high school students out in the fields, or even the Caucasian staff that ran the camp out in the fields, harvesting alongside the incarcerees there. It really took just about everyone within the camp in order to make sure that they could pull this thing off. And so within the Victory Garden, we try to honor their efforts here, growing some of the 52 different vegetables that they grew on the camp with various varieties of each different vegetable here within the Victory Garden. In addition to the vegetables that people knew would grow here in Wyoming. The farmers here were not afraid to experiment and try new things. For instance, it was the first time that celery was grown inside of the Bighorn Basin, and James Ito was even responsible for bringing in some Japanese vegetables, including burdock root and Napa cabbage and daikon that were grown here in the fields. He even gave some to the Japanese cooking club here within the camp, and then got incensed when they never invited him to dinner. So there was a huge variety, and we try to represent that, some of it here within our little space here. But the garden here is actually made a lot to represent not the big fields that the agriculture department grew in, but the small fields that sat just west of camp. In addition to just providing for the camp, there were others here within Heart Mountain, particularly Shoji Nagumo, who understood that families, and especially kids, could benefit from having something to tend to while they were here. Shoji, who was a gardener by trade, knew especially that if kids were not exposed to green things, if they were up here in the brown desert of northern Wyoming, that he felt that something would be missing from their lives. And so he decided that he was going to start this Victory Garden program to where families could have a small plot, little 40 by 20 patches that each family could do what they like with. This is little space that we've got here is made to replicate a little bit of one of those, but also to replicate some of the more informal flower gardens and vegetable gardens that were grown between the barracks as well, which was also commonplace. A lot of people tended little patches right outside their doors as well. So we have tried to celebrate a lot of different aspects of growing and of agriculture here at Heart Mountain within this little space that is the Victory Garden here, and to honor the memories of those who first brought life to the lands around us.